episode of the Optimistic Met Fan Podcast. I'm your host, Frank Arsberger, and on today we have a very special episode. It's the trade deadline. So, the Mets did make a couple of trades today. As far as their record goes, I know a lot of people aren't happy. They just got swept by San Diego. Really tough series out there in San Diego. I know that I was texting a lot of people in my chat, and everybody was a little unhappy about that. But on the good news, we did make some really nice moves as far as the bullpen goes. So we'll get into that. We're also going to talk into the next 24 hours. Should be exciting. Got a lot of guys still available. A lot of teams making some moves. The Mets short of their bullpen. So I know that I had one couple chat uh, with my group chat there. They were not happy, or at least one guy wasn't happy about the trade for Tyler Rogers. So the Mets did trade for him, uh, right-handed submariner from San Francisco, and they did trade for Ryan Helsley from St. Louis. I love that. That'll be fantastic in the eighth and ninth inning to help the Mets late in games. Guy throws the ball really hard. The one thing I think a lot of Mets fans have been, and I've been seeing stuff online. I'm not just going to call out a couple of my buddies that have chats, but the interesting thing is that the guys they gave up, I think, aren't really going to hurt the Mets. And I think that was the disagreement that a lot of us had was, the Mets are giving up on guys. This is what the Mets do. It was a stupid trade. I don't think there was any trade so far in the David Stearns era that's been stupid or any signing that's been stupid. There's always something behind it. As I've said in this podcast, I think that David Stearns is playing chess when everybody else is playing checkers. I continue to say that, and I'm going to back up this guy until he gives up somebody like Jed Williams or Jonah Tong for a rental player or something like that. Until he does something crazy like that, I think David Stearns is, like I said, playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers. So let's go into some of these trades. So the Mets, like I said, acquired two relievers. So the first guy, Tyler Rogers, was the first guy that broke, as far as guys that we acquired. So we did give up. I mean, you could argue that we gave up a lot. Yeah. I mean, there's no question. I think three guys to get a guy like him probably was a little much. Okay. But, if you look at Tyler Rogers' numbers, guy has a 1.8 ERA. He did very well against the Mets right-handers in that series. Struck out a whole bunch of guys. He's effective, okay? And he's one of those missing pieces I think the Mets needed in their bullpen. Was an added right-handed guy that could help guys like Reed Garrett and, they don't have Hescar on now. They sent him down to the minors. But, even guys like Ryan Stanek can't go out there every night. So getting a guy like Tyler Rogers, I thought was extremely important. And this was before the Helsley deal. So I thought that, even if they just had Rogers, that was a good move. But not happy that they had to give up Jose. I will say that. So I will give, my buddy, give you a shout out. I've been talking about you the last couple of minutes, Outflow. And even the mayor. Shout out to the mayor as well. Love you guys. You got to give up something to get something. I feel like in that Rogers deal, we gave up Jose Gudo. I really didn't like that part of it. If it was just the prospects, and yes, they were, as people pointed out to me, 10 and 12 prospects in the Mets system. Okay. Blade Ted Will and who was it? Drew Gilbert were the two guys that went in the deal, including Jose Gudo or Rogers. Yes, is that a lot? Sure. But that's the cost of doing business down in the major leagues. If a team knows you need bullpen help, and a couple other guys are having career years like Rogers is, this is what's going to happen. You're going to have to give up stuff to get stuff. Now, where I was drawing the line with a lot of the Met fans, they kept coming at me about this trade was, look at the roster construction that we have. Could you look me in the face and honestly say that you think Blake Tidwell and Drew Gilbert were going to be on this team next season? Because I couldn't tell you that with a straight face because I saw what Blake Tidwell did the first two times the Mets brought him up. He crashed and burned. He had a couple of good innings. So can you argue, okay, Frank, they could have been, at least Blake Tidwell could have been a good reliever for the Mets. They didn't have to give up on him that quickly. The thing is, he's been in the system for a little while now, has struggled in AAA, had a couple of good months in AAA, but kind of back and forth months. If you look up his stats, I was periodically looking it up every month, and he'd have one really good start, and then a couple of starts that you were scratching your head going, man, is this guy ever going to really put it all together? Because he has good stuff. And after those two outings that he had when he got called up, the answer is, I think, is no. I don't think, Blake Tidwell was the kind of guy that I was like, man, if a team calls me for Blake Tidwell, I'm going to say no. I mean, come on. Tyler Rogers, I'm not saying he's a lights out reliever, but he definitely is a boost to this bullpen. Would Blake Tidwell ever do that? I don't really know. I can't. And honestly, I'm leaning no because I saw what he did in the two outings that he had as a Met. It wasn't very good. So, I was okay with giving him up. As far as Drew Gilbert goes, and I did the prospect episode a little over a month ago. You can check that out on my YouTube page as well. All previous episodes of this podcast show. I spoke about Drew Gilbert as well. And the one thing I said was that he was falling down the charts as one of the outfielders that I thought the Mets could use. When you already have corner outfielders like Nemo and Soto taking the roster spaces on the team, because obviously, those are the top guys. And then you have center field that's wide open. But pretty much you have a whole bunch of guys that can play center field. Even in your minor league system, you have guys battling for that position. I mentioned guys like, Morabito, guys like Jet Williams. They're ahead of Drew Gilbert, in my opinion, as far as prospects go. I don't care where they were ranked as of the last time the top 30 got ranked. As a matter of fact, Jet Williams is the number one prospect in the Met system. So there you go. So I was kind of happy that, well, not happy. I wanted all these guys to stay Mets, so I'm not going to say that I'm happy that they got traded. But for a piece that could help us hopefully go further than we did last year, get to the World Series, possibly win a World Series, am I okay with letting those two guys go? Yes. 100% yes. One guy I wasn't okay with getting rid of, and this is the one thing that I kept scratching my head about when I was arguing with my friends when we saw this trade break, was if you're disappointed about this trade because the Mets lost Jose Budo, I could understand that, and I back you up 100%. If you're hung up because of the two prospects that I just mentioned and where they fall on the hierarchy of where the Mets are trying to go as a team and with the roster construction that is, then you guys are crazy. 100% crazy. There's no way you don't trade Blake Tidwell and Drew Gilbert, especially when it's for a reliever that could solidify the bullpen and help you win. Blake Tidwell and Drew Gilbert ain't going to do that. And if Drew Gilbert, which I argued with a couple of buddies of mine, was that good of a prospect, he would have been the Mets center fielder this season at some point. And he just kept regressing. So, sorry but not sorry. I think that was a good trade by the New York Mets. I'm going to stand by that. Now, Tyler Rogers could fall flat on his face and prove me wrong. Okay, that could happen too. It's more likely that he succeeds in the role the Mets give him. So, I mean, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we cross it. But, that was one trade that I thought was pretty ballsy by David Stearns. To say, like, hey, the Mets are going to improve this bullpen by the deadline. Here's Exhibit A. Now, Exhibit B was an even better one. And you still gave up some guys that I thought were pretty good. But, as my friend joked, oh, there were lesser prospects that weren't household names. okay, um, we got Ryan Helsley from the St. Louis Cardinals. The Cardinals asked for a couple of our farm system guys. Nate Dome was one of the guys. He's I want to say a starter, but I think he was more of a bullpen guy. And then a guy who I like, and a guy who I mentioned in my prospect episode a little over a month ago was Jesus Baez, shortstop turned third baseman, really good with the glove. But who knows if the bats are going to really develop the way that we want to. He was doing good in Brooklyn, so you know, again, it's a low-level prospect. I don't know. We're going to look a couple of years down the road and say, man, we shouldn't have got Helsley for these guys. They're both lower-level prospects. Don't really think is that big. So, I think that was a A-plus trade by the New York Mets there to get Helsley. And now you got a pretty good bullpen, as it turns out. Now you'll see who gets sent down, how to configure it. I think they had a mock configuration of what the bullpen could look like on Friday. I thought that was really encouraging. So, actually, I looked it up on my phone as I'm talking to you guys right now. But, pretty good bullpen. And when you look at the names on this bullpen, let's start from top to bottom. And, this is just the names that got brought out, so obviously you can rank them how you want. But having Ryan Stanek, Gregory Soto, Brooks Raley, Reed Garrett, Tyler Rogers, Ryan Helsley, and Edwin Diaz. Those 7 guys. You could argue the weakest link is probably Reed Garrett. I mean, and when your weakest link is Reed Garrett, your bullpen is doing pretty good. So, going with those 7 guys going forward, fantastic. Can't wait to see what the bullpen looks like now. Can't wait to see finally with enough bullets in the chamber what Carlos Mendoza and Jeremy Hefner can do with this bullpen. Definitely no excuse now for not knowing how to manage late inning games if you're Mendoza, because David Stearns gave you every single bullet to put in your chamber when it comes to the 7th, 8th, and 9th. There is no way you can screw that up. Now, yes, you probably could by, getting cute with it. But, if you know where guys place, if you know where you want to put guys, I like this bullpen. This is a World Series bullpen. The bullpen we had before, playoff bullpen, if you get lucky, if a guy gets hot, you can probably get to a World Series. You can't argue to me that this isn't a World Series bullpen. Now, with a little under 24 hours to go, get me a bat, get me a center fielder. You know what? Get me a starting pitcher. Now, depending on who it is, obviously, I don't want to give up any of my so-called untouchables that I have always mentioned on this podcast, like Jed Williams. Anybody that calls for him, hang up the phone right away. Anybody calls you on any of the 3 starters that I think are going to be phenomenal, if anybody calls you about Tom, Stroke, or McLean, hang up the phone immediately. Anybody calls you about Carson Benj, you hang up the phone. Even Ryan Clifford. You know what? Ryan Clifford is the one guy that can probably get you somebody good, but I'm a little hesitant to trade him away just in case, something happens to Pete, or, if you want to move Pete to a more DH-like role, you always have Ryan Clifford, in your back pocket as a first baseman prospect. So I really don't want to touch Ryan Clifford, but, Met fans, if we can get Sandy Alcantara, and I know a lot of my buddies are going to be like, dude, just give it up already. I don't think the Mets are going to get him. If we can get Sandy Alcantara, I'd give up. I would 100% give up Ryan Clifford. Call me crazy, but this is a former Cy Young guy, definitely a number 1 starter. You put him with Senga, Peterson, and Manaea. Telling me that team can't get to the World Series with the bullpen I just mentioned, and then you add in maybe a Luis Robert I mean, let's go all in. Let's go up to Eugenio Suarez. How about that? I got a list of guys that are still on this trade block. See, now I'm getting my juices flowing. I'm getting excited, thinking about what my buddy said. Get this trade deadline episode up. I'm getting it up. If you guys are liking what you're hearing, again, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Optimistic Met Fan Podcast on YouTube. You can get full episodes on there. You could also follow my clips and everything else I post on my TikTok page at the same name, Optimistic Met Fan. I love all you guys showing me a lot of love. Let's keep this episode going though with some interesting names. So I did do some research of teams that I thought were going to be on the trade block. So see, now I gotta calm it down a little because I'm getting a little too excited about this trade deadline. So, but Arizona, definitely a team looking to trade people. Eugenio Suarez, third base. I wanted him, but I think the price might be too high. All right, so I'm gonna ease up on Eugenio Suarez, even though I think he would be a game changer as far as the DH role goes. Imagine having him DHing with that team. That'd be pretty. That'd be pretty potent of an offense. And you know what? I just say Eugenio Suarez because there's been talks of maybe the Phillies going after him, and I freaking hate the Phillies, man. I don't want the Phillies to get anybody that good. I mean, they already got Durant from the Twins right before started filming today. So they already bolstered their bullpen. You know, like I cockily said to my friend, I said, sarcastically, I said, oh, good, the Phillies got, another reliever that we can hit a grand slam off of in the World Series. Because this was the same Phillies team that tried to put fear into us by signing Carlos Estevez last season, or trading for him last year. So Phillies could do whatever they want. I think we own the Phillies. Anybody who follows that guy on social media, that Philly fan that was always talking crap about the Mets, bring it on, dude. Bring it on, Tiny Tino. I don't think you're. I think you're a closet Met fan, to tell you the truth, wearing that Lindor jersey when Lindor hits home runs. But that's me. I'm trying to do my own thing. So show me love too. I show you love on your page. So show me some love. But yeah, Eugenio Suarez, I don't think he would be a bad pickup. I just think that the asking price for him is going to be too much. So, that's kind of like a dark horse type trade that I think the Mets might be able to pull off if they wanted to really give you that blockbuster trade. I want a starting pitcher though. So you know what? I kind of like Merrill Kelly. A lot of guys talk me into him just because he's a middle of the rotation guy, and not only that, he throws a lot of innings. So I think he'd be a perfect fit for the New York Mets. Another guy that's kind of interesting, that's having a down year in Arizona, is Zach Gallen. He's another power right that I think could really boost the Mets' chances. I don't really see Arizona giving him up either, but we'll see. I mean, right now, the Mets need something in that rotation. I think they're lacking in the back end of it a little bit. I like the front end of the rotation. Just, would be nice to add a little bit more. As far as, I already said Sandy Alcantara. So I'm not going to get into him again. Other pitchers that I thought would be interesting, Dylan Cease. I don't see the Mets getting him either. I think that would cost way too much in prospects. And I kind of like the fact that David Stearns has given up everybody to get all these pieces. So, but again, I think Dylan Cease would be a game changer. Uh, so that's the trade that at least in the rotation, I think the Mets might be lacking because David Stearns feels very good about the guys in AAA. I don't think they're gonna get the whole farm system in one season. So, maybe you can trade for Zach Eflin from Baltimore. That'd be interesting because I don't think Zach Eflin would cost you a lot. And Zach Eflin's another good back end of the rotation starter, kind of like a Amaro Kelly type. Uh, Definitely an innings eater as well. But I'm not crazy about Zach Eflin. But if the Mets did it, I wouldn't hate it, depending on what they had to give up. So, again. Now on to the center fielders that I think the Mets could get. When I said get another bat, if you can swing a trade and not have to give up a lot to get one of these guys, I think either one of them would be a fit in New York because they both play really good defense, something that our GM loves. Okay, uh, David Stearns loves up the middle defense. So getting Luis Robert from the White Sox, if you don't have to give up Mark Vientos, I'm in. Now, there was talks that maybe Luis Angel Acuna was the main piece in that trade that would have to go back to the White Sox. If that's the case, and I know this ain't the most popular opinion, I'm all in on that because the emergence of Ronnie Mauricio and Brett Beatty coming into his own, or at least showing what he can be, and everybody's versatility, being able to play second and third, something Acuna can't give you. Yes, he gives you really good speed off the bench, but that doesn't warrant really being an untouchable to me, especially when you can get that speed from guys on your team like Marte and Mauricio. You don't really need Acuna. That's all he's going to do. He's not going to start, and he's just coming off the bench. I think that's kind of where the Mets view him, and that's kind of where I view him at this point, because when he did start for long periods of time, he looked vulnerable and he looked exposed, as a hitter. And, at least these other guys give you a chance uh, as everyday guys. So, yeah, if Acuna is the main piece in a trade, at least Robert, I am all in. But, again, we'll see. I think another outfielder that won't cost you a lot, I just don't know. I don't think it has a lot of traction like the Luis Robert trade because we don't know what Baltimore wants back. So there hasn't been any reports on that. But Cedric Mullins is another guy that I like. Power lefty bat, solid defense, got some speed. That could be really interesting. And you put him in a team that's in a playoffs. And when Baltimore was doing their thing when they were a contender, he was at his best. So maybe a change of scenery, maybe coming to the Mets would be a good thing for Cedric Mullins. But I really like the Luis Robert one more because at least we know who the White Sox are kind of interested in, and we can kind of work with that. We don't really know what Baltimore is thinking right now. So they're being very close to the vest, at least with their thought process on the label back. Nothing has really leaked. At least I haven't seen it. So, then I had some interesting ones, obviously. Before the Mets did all open moves, I thought Emmanuel Clase would have been a good pick. But of course, he's now dealing with that whole gambling situation. He's kind of, on administrative leave right now. So, and that's a shame. Just baseball. Just wanted to say that really quick. But, I'm kind of happy where the Mets went with their bullpen. So, as far as these other guys that I was going to mention, I'm kind of going to leave them out just because, honorable mentions. What the hell? Pittsburgh Pirates, David Bednar. I thought he would have been an interesting pick for the Mets bullpen, but obviously I guess they like Brian Helsley better. Um, and Griffin Jacks from the Twins. I thought was an interesting pick. And actually, that might still be up for grabs. Wouldn't really be that crazy for the Mets to add another bullpen on. But very unlikely at this point. I think if they do add anything, it's going to be of the starting pitcher and hitter role. I think the three guys that I mentioned, and actually an outside mention. Kind of interesting that Nolan Arenado hasn't been talked about yet. Don't really see the Mets doing that because again, unless you're going to DH somebody else, put Nolan Arenado third. Kind of like the Eugenio Suarez situation, where it's like if the Mets were to get one of those guys, where do you actually put them on the roster? I think Suarez would have been more DH. I think Nolan Arenado is more of the third baseman and then the other guy's DH type thing. I don't think the Mets want to do that. I think they're very content with what their infield looks like. So, I would expect the Mets to be in outfield talks and possibly starting pitching talks for the next 24 hours. I'm very excited to, hopefully bring you guys another episode right after the trade deadline because it'd be really fun to talk about, you know, everything that happened, not just today and, you know, late last night when the Mets made all these moves, but definitely like the bullpen moves that they made. Three already, three awesome relievers, and now it's let's go. Let's start winning some ball games. I know that a little disappointed that we got swept by San Diego. We did sweep the Giants. We got the Giants coming up on Friday, so tomorrow kind of a lazy baseball day. Not a lot of games on, only three. Kind of weird, only 6 teams playing tomorrow, but I think all the focus will be on the MLB network and wherever anybody gets their trade information from and their rumors. I know I'm going to be texting people like crazy tomorrow up until 6 p.m. And let's just hope that the Mets make one or two more moves. Let's hope that there is a blockbuster move that David Stearns is trying to cook up. I know a lot of guys think this might be it, that, you know, he's only going to fix the bullpen. I think, you got to strike when the iron's hot. So I'd be very surprised if the Mets aren't in at least talks during the day. Maybe they don't do anything. We'd be very surprised uh, if they just sit pat the way that they are. I think we definitely need one more trade. I don't know if that's for a starting pitcher, like I said, or an outfielder, or if they do go all in and get Eugenio Suarez. I think that would blow my mind. But we'll see. I think the Mets are heading in the right direction. I think this trade deadline so far has been I'm not going to say an A plus. I'll say it's an A effort, an A grade so far for David Stearns in this trade deadline. Uh, Very excited for the next 24 hours. But with that said, um, like I always say, stay amazing, everybody. Let's go Mets. And in David Stearns, we trust. Okay, let's get this trade deadline done. All right. I'll see you guys next week.